Our county board proceedings will now come to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Locke with the invocation.
Bless us as we gather for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in the face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. Amen.
Amen. Supervisor Roble.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of this evening's agenda.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this evening's agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Carried. Is there anybody from the public that would like to express their opinion on anything on the agenda this evening? Now is your chance to talk.
Good evening. I know I address you differently in the past, but I just want to draw attention to Resolution 180, which is the revisions to the pay schedule. I ask that you support this. I don't know if you're aware, but what was voted on last month excluded approximately 400 employees from even receiving any type of raise. So I ask that you support this. Again, you're only increasing the pay scale, not any pay, but those individuals would be subject to a small increase through the merit plan. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board on anything on the agenda this evening? Now is your chance. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to address the board on anything on the agenda this evening? That portion of the meeting will be closed. Communications and petitions from the clerk.
We have a notice of claim from Christopher Beege for damage to his vehicle, referred to Personnel and Finance. A petition for zoning amendment from Lawrence F. Seidel in the town of Neenah, requesting a zoning change from R1 with wetland overlay to R1 without wetland overlay to build a detached garage, referred to Planning and Zoning. And then you have a number of resolutions from other counties. Those will all be forwarded to the Legislative Committee. And that's all.
Okay, so all those resolutions are going to be forwarded? Okay, thank you. Supervisor Haig? Your light was on there. Sorry. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as parks, we're going to be having our meeting. It's going to change a little bit. It'll still be the first Thursday, but we're going to try a couple of mornings, and that'll be at 8:45 the second. And during the budget hearing, there's a number of supervisors that asked if we would try to bring back some of the money that we're paying out for whatever certain user fees. So we've been working on it, and if anyone has any feelings that they'd like to share with the committee, feel free to come to the meeting. Also, you all received the Sunnyview Expo. Vicki did a super good job. Take a peek at it, look at it, and heck, I'd say give her a call and tell her how good of a job she did for Winnebago County. Thank you.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fireworks, picnics, parades all mark our celebration of July 4th, but I'd like to encourage and invite you again to come to the courthouse at 8 a.m. on that date to hear the sheriff read the Declaration of Independence. It's a good way to put into perspective the reason why we are celebrating that important date, the birthday of the United States of America. So please join us at 8 a.m. on July 4th.
Thank you. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, last Monday the Parks Committee had their annual tour, and I want to thank a couple of people who really made that tour good or special. One, I want to thank Eileen McCoy from the Neenah Parks and Recreation Director for showing us a 2 or 3 of the Neenah parks and what they have and possibly amenities which the county parks may have. And the second individual, I want to really commend, I could tell you what the tour was about and what we saw, but I think a picture was worth 1,000 words. And I want to thank Supervisor Keel here, who took 16 pictures and posted them on his Facebook page with a nice little caption and adequate, not better than adequate, the caption of each thing we saw on that tour. So if you ever want to see about the county parks, hook up with Brady Keel's, Supervisor Keel's Facebook page, because he took 16 very excellent pictures of the tour. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up to a presentation we had a couple weeks ago, Mr. Winters was here, and he discussed potentially spending $100,000 on a study for some type of a controlled intersection at the intersection of Oak Ridge and CB. We had a resolution come before this board that went back to committee. I did eventually find some numbers from the Sheriff's Department, so I want to thank Sheriff Motz for providing those. There was a lot of conflicting information in regards to accidents and fatalities at that intersection. So what I have from January 1st, 2011 through June 1st, 2015, total crashes within a half-mile radius of that intersection were 24. 13 of those were deer-related. Accident injuries there were 2, and fatalities were 0. So that again is a time frame, January 1, 2011 through June 1st, 2015, and I did share that information also at the Highway Department meeting on Monday morning. So just keep that in mind if and or when that comes back. They also did do a speed spy survey at that intersection. Sheriff Motz indicated it does not appear to be a speed issue based on the average speed, which was at the 50th percentile, and something else he noted was at the 85th percentile, which I didn't necessarily understand, but basically the bottom line was that that intersection, according to Sheriff Motz, was no more or less dangerous than any other intersection in Winnebago County. So, thank you.
Thank you. Approval of the proceedings from May 19th meeting. It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. County Executives Report.
I'd like to congratulate all the scholarship recipients that are in the audience, and you'll be dealt with later in the agenda. But I've been trying to keep the board informed on issues in the state budget that might affect the county. And Winnebago County has been pretty committed to capital improvements for bridges and highways. And in fact, in the last 10 years, we've done $42 million of projects, bridges and highway projects. But that included $15 million of state and federal money. And both at the federal level and at the state level, highway monies are becoming tight. And in fact, one of the issues that Joint Finance will take up this week is whether they borrow the full amount requested or borrow some lesser amount and reduce the projects, or perhaps they could find additional revenues. But it looks like they're going to focus on reducing the amount of borrowing and then either delaying or canceling some projects to do that. And that could have an impact on the county, because we often get a state or federal participation in the highway projects we do, and that could slow down the pace at which we're doing county highway projects. I think our roads are actually in fairly good shape in this county, but we generally do some projects every year, and like I say, we've put $42 million together with the state and federal monies in the last 10 years into highway and bridge projects. There's two resolutions tonight that I want to draw special attention to. One the sheriff mentioned, and that's with regard to the pay plan. As I originally submitted it, it had a base raise increase. And normally when we do a base raise increase, that shifts the ranges for the top and the bottom of a pay range for employees. Any employee that's received all of their steps because they were here before we froze the steps, or because they were in a collective bargaining group that continued to receive steps and received all the steps, would be at the very top of their range. And based on what we passed at the last meeting, if you were at the top of your range, you would not receive a true raise, but would receive your performance pay in the form of a bonus. And the problem that would result is then for about nearly half of our employees, maybe a little less, they would never receive another raise again. They would simply receive a cash amount each year. And so the first year, if they had good performance, and let's say they would receive a $500 cash award because they weren't eligible for a raise, that would make their W-2 pay go up by $500 from the prior year. But every subsequent year, if they continued to have good performance and get the same review, if we left those ranges in place without change, they would continue to just get cash awards, and the effect of that would be that their W-2 pay would be level all years going forward. So we still need to address the brackets. This can be a little confusing, and Mike Collard's in the audience tonight, so if when we get to this item, if there's some uncertainty on the impact of changing the brackets, I would encourage the board to call on Mr. Collard to explain what the function is. I'm sure he can do a better job than what I've done tonight. Another item on the agenda I want to mention is the Judiciary Committee and the coroner are asking the board to consider another amendment to the resolution that increased the cremation fees. As I mentioned in the prior meeting, the state budget does have some language in there that waives some of the coroner's fees for indigent burials. So that puts the coroner's budget under pressure. But it also freezes the coroner's fees for a 3-year period and then limits how they can change. We'll basically lose the discretion over those fees. So if we want to make a change in those fees, we would have to do it now. I'm not taking a position on what the right number is to do that, but the Judiciary Committee and the coroner are asking you to increase that amount to $250 per cremation. The $170 per cremation would not cover, that increase would not cover the lost revenues from the indigent burial fees that the state's waiving. But it's a decision you'll have to make knowing that you don't have discretion on controlling those fees going forward. And that's the only items I have tonight. I do hope that the coroner's also in the back of the room, and if there's some questions on that item when you get to it, I would encourage the board to call on the coroner. Thank you.
Thank you. The board's report. Our Parkview administrator, Morgan Hinckley, has left, and we'll be interviewing for her replacement starting this Thursday. So we have several very well qualified people, so the interview will be starting this Thursday. At this time, I'd like to ask Michael Colliard, the Human Resource Director, is going to give us an explanation on Resolution 180-6/2015 to the pay schedule for non-union regular employees. So would you come up? Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few words about the resolution regarding the minimums and maximums of the pay ranges. And as the county executive explained, normally when we do pay increases for the year, They do have two parts. I think last time we did this, I was even asked by the board why there were two separate paragraphs in the resolution. There was one paragraph which raised everybody's pay by X percent, and then there was another paragraph that raised the minima and the maxima of the pay ranges by that same percent. And that kept, of course, everyone within the range when they got that pay raise. I don't remember the exact increase that year, but say it's a 2% increase. If the person already at the maximum gets a 2% increase and the range goes up 2%, that person stays at the maximum of that pay range for that position. And the same effect would take place at the minimum, where the minimum would go up by the same amount and someone at the minimum would have their pay increased. So those two things normally go hand in hand, or traditionally go hand in hand, as what we call an across-the-board raise, which does both things at the same time. Now, of course, last month, the board's action in adopting the merit pay plan did away with across-the-board raises and directed that they be combined with the merit pay plan, so that each employee's pay raise would be solely dependent on what their rating is on the performance evaluation, combined with where that employee's pay is in the pay range. In other words, we had a formula, we have a little table that is weighted so that people lower in the pay range get a bigger share than people higher in the pay range or at the maximum. And that's so that as employees gain more experience, they gain more expertise in their jobs, they provide more value to the county and its taxpayers, that should be recognized by moving their pay a little bit closer to that maximum each year when they have the performance to warrant that. So that's well and good, but that does leave us without the adjustments to the pay scales that normally come with the across-the-board ranges. And so we're asking the board at this time to go ahead and approve an increase of 1.5% to those pay ranges. Now, this would do two things. It would raise the minimum of the pay scale, which often is our hiring rate. And so it is very important to keep up with where things are in the hiring market. It is tightening a little bit for employers, and it's important to find the right person, so we have to remain competitive in those hiring rates. And if you leave them sit too long, we won't be competitive. And probably the more important factor is at the maximum. We do have between 350 and 400 employees at the maximum of their pay range. Why so many? Well, one is we have a lot of good experienced employees who have been with us a long time, but even more directly, it's because many of our pay scales, particularly in the union contracts, were step systems where after a certain number of years an employee would more or less automatically be advanced to the maximum. Now those step systems are all gone, with one exception of the union for the law enforcement deputies, which still have a union contract to govern their pay increases. Now everyone else's increases have no steps, just the merit pay. So the merit pay is replacing the steps for a large majority of our employees. So as an employee gets to that maximum or is already at that maximum, traditionally in past years that employee's pay increase has just been the across the board. Now in this case, our goal with the merit pay system is to make as many employees as possible subject to merit pay so that their pay will depend on how well they perform. So without knowing that we are going to adjust the maximum, we don't know if they'll be able to even get the pay increase that they might otherwise earn. Now, as I said, the pay scale is skewed so that people at the maximum are going to earn, for the same performance, not quite as much of a pay increase as they would at the beginning of the pay. But there still is some. And I think the objective and the way I tried to construct the chart and the system was that if someone is a decent employee, a good employee, even if they're at the maximum, they still ought to get a little cost of living increase as long as performance is good enough to justify it. It's not going to be as much as it would at the low end because we don't need the component that moves them toward that maximum. But an immediate reaction to the board's passages of the merit pay plan was among employees who were aware of it. They realized, hey, if I'm at the maximum, this merit pay plan is going to be meaningless to me because the board took no action on across the board raises. So I'm at the maximum, I can't get anything more than the maximum. I don't think that was really the intent. It was undecided last month whether there would be adjustments to those maximums. We clearly did not decide that. Nothing was proposed on that. But because of the reaction from some employees who already have heard of that, we want them to know that they have a stake in this merit pay plan. We want them to know that their performance will be subject to the same kind of measurement that everyone else is, and we want their buy-in for it. You know, this merit pay system we have is a fairly unusual system right now for local government. It's fairly advanced in that respect, more typical of a private sector system, which is fine and well, but for it to work well, we need to have employees understand that it's a very important process to go through and that their pay really will depend on the outcome of those evaluations. So we're going to start training supervisors on those evaluations next month, and we want to be able to tell them, tell your employees, your pay is going to depend on the outcome of this. Regardless of whether you're at the low end, if you're a new hire, just at the minimum of the pay range, or whether you've maxed out on your steps long ago and are at the maximum, in either event, you still have a stake in this. You need to understand how you're going to be evaluated. You need to have some incentive to get a good evaluation. That's part of the whole system, the way it will work. So I think it will work much better if we know ahead of time, before we start the evaluations, that we can tell employees, your raise will depend on this evaluation. That's a much stronger message than your pay may or may not be increased by the county board, depending on your evaluation. You know, we can't tell them the amount because the amount is subject to a formula, and it's going to depend on the amount that's appropriated by the county board in October or November as part of the budget process. But we want to be able to tell them, you will have a share. Here's how your share is figured, and there will be some room even at the top for you to move up and get a reasonable cost of living type of increase if you have strong performance in your job. So that's essentially why we brought this forward right away this month. And I don't know if there are questions, if the chairman would prefer them to be now or later.
Supervisor Turner. I was just wondering what happened with the wage study, and would the wage study that we approved, $80,000 for a while back, had corrected this issue before we did what we did last year? I mean, did we kind of put the cart before the horse here?
Well, no, we haven't done the wage study yet. The wage study will be done in the next. Is my microphone on? I think it's on. Okay.
It wasn't.
The wage study has not been done. It will be done in the upcoming 12 months. And in fact, the resolution before you tonight directs us to complete that wage study within the next 12 months. And that's about how long one takes, in my experience, from what I've seen in other counties and cities across the state. So we're ready to start on that. I've been working on a draft request for proposals. I have a list of possible consultants to consider, and that request for proposals will be out before the end of the month, so that we get that back on track to do it in time. In terms of whether the cart is before the horse, that's a very good question, and what I've laid out several times for the Personnel and Finance Committee is, I don't think we just have a cart and a horse. I think we've got 5 pieces to the puzzle, and it's very difficult to decide which one to do first or in what order. But I did set out an order, and the first part of our compensation restructuring plan was the merit pay, because that was the priority set by the board. And the board and the Personnel and Finance Committee didn't want to consider the other matters until that was resolved. In some ways, it's like hitting a moving target no matter where you start, because whether you have merit pay is going to affect how you set up your pay scales, and how you set up your pay scales is going to affect how you compare those pay scales to other counties and other employers. So everything kind of depends on each other, but you can't do it all at once. It's too big. So we've set out an order, and the order is to first look at the merit pay and resolve the merit pay plan, then to look at some of our pay rules, such as how pay adjustments are made, overtime rules, and so forth, then to straighten out our pay classes, our pay grades, and combine. We currently have, I think, 98 different pay grades and 18 different pay plan schedules. And we don't need 18 different pay plans, so we need to consolidate those clearly We need a consultant to help us do that. So by the time the consultant's on board, that's going to be the first task for the consultant. And then we'll move into a market study and other adjustments that we'll want to make as part of the pay plan later on. So it's all part of the big plan and process, and this is the next step right now, and it is proceeding, and I would say, compared to what I've seen other organizations do, once we really got started on this year, it's moving, I think, fairly rapidly, and I'm convinced it will continue to move forward.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question. You made the comment that people at the top of their pay scale or pay plan would get a cost of living increase. That was not part of what we voted for.
No, maybe I misspoke. I shouldn't have called it a cost of living increase. It will be a merit pay plan increase, but we want to leave them some room to get a merit increase as a trade-off for not getting a cost of living. So I was just kind of using a verbal shortcut when I called it that. I'm really just saying they ought to be able to get at least something based on merit, even if they're at that maximum, because it only makes sense if the market changes. You know, if I'm, just to give an example, say I'm hiring registered nurses. That labor market for registered nurses is going to change every year. And so I have to be able to hire here, I have to be able to retain the experienced ones I have, so I'm going to want to adjust my pay scales. And every consultant, I can pretty much guarantee any consultant you can hire as part of a pay study will tell you exactly this. You need to adjust your pay scales every year to match it to the market. You know, some years you might have to make a bigger move, sometimes you might have to adjust certain ones more than others, but every year you're going to have to make some adjustments, otherwise you're going to fall out of whack compared to the labor market and the economy.
Well, that's what the wage study is about. We got a second question. In the actual resolution, it talks about people with the maximum pay raises to participate in a merit program and receive merit pay increases if they earn them up to the new maximum of their pay raise. Are you saying that the bonus thing, you're not planning on doing the bonus?
No, they would receive, say someone is at the maximum now, right, and the board passes this resolution and increases the maximum by 1.5%. Now, the highest share that employee can get is a 4 shares of the merit pay pool. We don't know exactly what that might be. It might be as high as 2%. It'll probably be less than that, but it depends on what's in the budget. Say it's 2%. That person will then get a 1.5% base pay increase to bring them back to the maximum, and then the extra 0.5% would be paid as a bonus.
That's good. That was my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe my question's been answered. Thank you.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question has been partially answered. I want to get back for a moment to the pay scale thing. You said there's how many pay scales?
I believe we have 98 pay grades in 18 different schedules.
Okay. That seems to me be ultimately complicated.
That's the next step in our process to try to...
Are you planning on reducing the number of pay scales or pay grades?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Because I don't know how you can manage it with 98 grades. So.
We've been doing it, but right. Yeah, it's not ideal.
This is a different process now, so. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's it, no more questions.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to ask the recipients of the scholarship award to come forward. Nina High School is Aaron N. Kubiak. Oshkosh North High School is James N. Fitzhenry. I would like you to come forward here and line up against on the side here. Oshkosh West is Logan Myers. Hannah Shakarel, but she has another obligation, won't be here tonight. McKenna Hansen. Taylor Steno, Christy Bry, Ashley Rumlow. Amro High School is Aaron Kelly. Coven Harbor Christian School is Kristen Bolt. And I would like to ask Supervisor Widener, the chair of the UW Extension Committee, to come up and give the scholarships.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm the one that's going to deal with you tonight. This is always one of the neatest things about being on the county board, is to come up here and talk about these very neat young women and young men that are entering into their next phase of their lives, and talk about what a great thing they've done to win these scholarships. Just a little bit of information on how we do this. Winnebago County gives 9 $1,000 scholarships to seniors at any high school in which the person resides in Winnebago County. So we could, for example, have a school outside of Winnebago County as long as the student is here. The scholarship is based strictly on an essay, and the essay is based on if you were if you're an elected official in Winnebago County, what would it be and why? Once we get those, and this year we got 43 entries, which is a record, and once we get them, we take off all the information relating to people and to schools, and they're sent over to UW Fox Valley, and we have 3 professors that then go through them and evaluate who are the best ones. In the last couple of years, we've heard back from the professors that the essays are getting better and better every year, which is congratulations to y'all. This year, we're giving 10 scholarships. And as I said earlier, we had 43 entries, and we were concerned at the committee level that we might have a situation where we got a 9th and a 10th scholarship that were basically the same. As it turned out, that was exactly what happened. The 9th and 10th scholarships were essentially equal. Now you could take the argument, how about 11, how about 12, but we agreed to limit it to 10. So basically what I want to do tonight is to present these to these young men and young women and wish them luck on their next stage of their lives. And so I'll call your names if you come up, and we'll give you your... Okay, the first person will be Aaron Kubiak, and I hope I pronounce these all correctly. Congratulations. Oh, you got the book on? Okay, that's it. Thank you. James Fitzhenry.
Where are you going to school?
I'm going to the University of St. Thomas.
We'll come back to that.
Come up and tell them.
Thank you. Logan Myers. Congratulations.
You have to tell them where you're going to school.
I'll be going to school at UW Oshkosh.
I was going to do that later. We'll come back to that. Okay, Hannah Sieber? She's the one. She's not here. I'm sorry. Okay, McKenna Hansen. Congratulations. Taylor Steno. Congratulations. Okay, Ashley Rumlow. Congratulations. Thank you. Aaron Kelly. Congratulations. And Kristen Bold. Kristen, thank you. Okay, now to go back what I'm planning on doing, I'd like each of the people to come up here, tell us what school they went to, what their plan is for the next year, where they're going to go to school, and if they know it, what their major will be. Name, school, and major. And speak right into the mic.
All right, well, my name is Aaron Kubiak. I went to Neenah High School. I'm going to be attending the University of St. Thomas in the Twin Cities and looking to do a business communications major.
All right, my name is James Fitzhenry. I went to Oshkosh North High School, and I am planning on going to UW-Madison next year and majoring in some sort of political science and history degree.
My name is Logan Myers. I went to Oshkosh West High School, and next year I'll be attending University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh for a degree in finance.
Hi, I'm McKenna Hansen. I went to Oshkosh West, thank you, and I'll be attending the University of Oshkosh in the fall and majoring in nursing.
Hi, my name is Taylor Stino. I went to Oshkosh West as well, and I will be attending UW-Madison in the fall, and I will be majoring in biochemistry.
My name is Ashley Rumlow. I went to Oshkosh West High School, and I will be going to Silver Lake in Manitowoc, and I'm majoring in elementary education.
My name is Erin Kelly, and I went to Amur High School this past year, and I'm going to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh for nursing.
My name is Kristen Bolt. I am a homeschool student, and I will be attending UW-Oshkosh for social work.
Okay, I'd like to thank all these great students we got here, and let's give them one last hand. And incidentally, if you'd like to stay and see what really happens at the county board, you're welcome to do that.
Zoning reports and ordinances. Report number 1, David and Heidi Sweet, Town of Algoma. Supervisor Egan.
I move for the approval of report number 1.
It's been moved and seconded to accept report number 1. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried. A mandatory ordinance number 06115, rezoning R1 for tax parcel number 002-0041-06. Supervisor Egan.
I move for the approval of a mandatory ordinance number 1.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, or just a minute? Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question. We're moving from R3 to R1, and I realize that R3 allows more. Is there a particular gain by going to R1 that you would want to go to a less restricted situation?
They're going to be doing building a residence out there where this is going to be going, where R3, you know, you can do subdivisions and all that others, so that's why it's going to be.
Thank you.
Okay. Report number 2, Linda and Ronald Walkholz, Town of Nakaimai. Supervisor Egan.
I move for the approval of report number 2.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried. A mandatory ordinance number 2, rezoning to I-1 for tax parcel number 012-0250. Supervisor Egan.
I move for the approval of mandatory ordinance number 2.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Carried. A mandatory ordinance number 3, Timothy W. and Barbara G. Rossi, Town of Clayton, rezoning to R1 for tax parcel number 006-0055. Supervisor Egan.
That should go to the supervisor of Clayton.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of mandatory ordinance number 3.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the mandatory ordinance number 3. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Carried. A mandatory ordinance number 4, Kimberly Clark Corporation, Town of Menasha, rezoning from I-1 for tax parcel number 008-0610.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of mandatory ordinance number 4.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Motion number 173, 5/2015. Amend previously adopted ordinance number 173, 5/2015, amending section 5.042 of the General Code of Winnebago County coroner's cremation permit fee by replacing the $170 cremation permit fee to $250. Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with the notice given, I move to amend the previously adopted ordinance number 173-52015. The first thing I would like to do, with permission, would be to strike the word committee on line 27. Having done that, I have a few comments. First of all, I would like to explain why you got an amended agenda for tonight's meeting. After conferring with County Executive Harris, Chairman Albright, and Corporation Counsel John Bodner, out of courtesy to the Chairman of Judiciary and Public Safety, I contacted Supervisor Wingren on Monday, May 25th, 6 days after the May meeting. I sent an email to David Albright and John Bodner, which read, because this item originated in Judiciary and Public Safety, I spoke to Bill Wingren about this and he would like to co-sponsor this legislation, unquote. Unfortunately, when the agenda was sent out, Supervisor Wingren's name was left off. I mention this only so you don't think his participation was an afterthought. He was supportive from the beginning. Now on to the issue at hand. As some of you may have noticed, I was the very last supervisor to cast my vote on this item at our May meeting. I was bewildered by what was taking place at the end of an exhausting 4-hour meeting. Right after that vote, someone said to me, quote, I don't think they know what they just did, unquote. At the next evening, at Aviation's informal get-together to discuss a new building, several supervisors approached me saying the last item was rushed through. What could we do? It was suggested by some, including Chairman Albright, that it should be reconsidered. However, I explained that a reconsideration cannot be amended. So I began looking for another option. In reading Robert's Rules of Order, I found a motion entitled, Amend Something Previously Adopted. That is what we have before us this evening. Mr. Bodner agreed with my findings that only a simple majority would be needed. Now bear with me while I recreate for you what happened near the end of the May meeting. Supervisor Wingren made the motion to adopt, and it was seconded. Supervisor Fari then made a motion to amend. It was seconded. The chairman immediately called for a voice vote. Supervisor Eisen pointed out that he had rung in to speak. The chairman declared Supervisor Eisen had rung in after the vote was taken. Now it gets interesting. No result of the voice vote was announced. Supervisor Fari moved to adjourn. It was seconded. The chairman did not recognize that motion. Supervisor Finch advised Supervisor Fari that vote was only for the amendment. Supervisor Fari then withdrew his motion to adjourn. The chairman then announced we would electronically vote on Supervisor Fari's amendment. The chairman announced, quote, this is passed. He then immediately announced we will vote on the amended $170. Again, no discussion. Even though Mr. Eisen's light must have still been lit, and by now I had rung in requesting to speak. Rather, the chairman announced that too had passed. The entire time spent on item 173 was 4.5 minutes. A 4-hour meeting and a measly 4.5 minutes was devoted to this item. In quoting Robert's rules, quote, "The purpose of reconsidering a vote is to permit correction of a hasty decision," unquote. While this is not a reconsideration, it is brought forward for the same reason, because of a hasty decision. At this time, I'd like our coroner, Barry Busby, to explain where we are with our fees compared to other counties in the state. From the information I see, Winnebago County is in the bottom quarter of the counties. I have a number of questions. First of all, is that true? Secondly, what complications do you see down the road if we don't increase it from the 170?
Thank you. I came back from a conference with other coroners and medical examiners from April and brought this back for consideration because this is a one-shot deal. Once the governor signs into law the joint finance rules and information that they have in front of them, the governor signs that into law, we will not, first of all, we will not be compensated for WCCAP or indigent people, period. We're going to lose a lot of money on that for is already in our budget. The second thing is that for 2 years or 3 years, one or the other, you don't get to raise the rates for coroner fees, and it can only be raised at 1 to 2 or 3% max, which means about $1.50 to $3 or $4 per time that you can raise it, and that's after 3 years. So this really is a chance to put it in. It's the only fee that the coroner's office has to add to the budget to take away some of the pain of doing business. We know that death is increasing in complexity, and it's going to take a lot more effort in the days to come to keep investigating. It probably will, in someplace along the line, hopefully after my tenure, need a full-time secretary and maybe full-time investigators to be out there. I have a couple of really great investigators now that are per diem and are handling it fine, and we're okay right now. But someday it might happen that you need to have full-time people, and by putting this into effect, you're going to soften the blow down the line. And I say down the line, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We are currently 44th in collecting revenues out of 72 counties at $150. I took these measurements from what was given to me from the beginning of the year. Since then, and since the April notifications this came out, a lot of the counties below us and ahead of us already, charging up to $500, have already increased. Now, I don't have those numbers in front of us yet, and we probably won't get them until after the bill's signed, but I've been told by many counties that their fees are in the process of being raised, if they can get it in before the governor signs the bill and becomes effective September 1st, and or they already have it increased. If we stick with the $170, we're 42nd out of the 72 counties. We're about the 7th or 8th largest county in the state of Wisconsin. I think that says some bearing on where we're at. Milwaukee at $500, I would say that's a little steep because they make the funeral directors take the bodies to Milwaukee County. In our area, we go to the funeral directors and we do the work of going out and spending our time going out. So, and I passed this information out on the legislation and the Joint Finance Committee's findings and what they were going to do last year, or in the May meeting. I also had put together the fees that are out there. We do not charge for signing death certificates, which would be a tax on everybody that dies, period. The cremations are an elective position or alternate to the burials, and it's a good way for the coroner's office to help support the budget and keeping it at a lower number. Any questions?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I would just like to reemphasize something you said, that Winnebago County doesn't charge to sign a death certificate. One of the phone calls I've got over the last 3 weeks was from a supervisor who said that this amounts to a death tax because this is what you're charging to sign a death certificate. That is not true, correct?
No. Well, it's not true. No, it's not a death tax, but everybody that dies is going to have to pay whatever the fee would be.
Thank you. The last question I have, this was a question raised either in an email or on a phone call to me also, was have you increased these rates, these fees, in the last several years? Before the meeting, I talked to Executive Harris, and I think I understood him correctly. In the last several years, you've had 2 or 3 or 4 minor $20, $25 increases. Is that true?
No, I think it's been about 10 years since we've went to the 150. We asked for it several times in the last couple of years, but no, it stayed at 150 for quite a while, since Kathy Wood was my secretary, so I know that it was 6 or 7 years.
In closing, here are a few facts. Number one, we should appreciate the fact that the coroner brought this matter to our attention. Number two, the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee supported the coroner unanimously. The county executive announced before the last meeting and again this evening that he supported this item. To reiterate what the coroner has said, the dollar amount will be frozen for the next 2 years. After the 2 years, the fee can only be raised by the rate of the CPI, Consumer Price Index, which at last report was 1.27%. That would allow us to raise the fee 3 years from now by approximately $2. Yes, a measly $2. In an email to me from the county executive, Mr. Harris told me we can fund shortfalls in the coroner's budget with fee increases or from the tax levy. So that we don't have to burden the taxpayers even more, I urge you to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I certainly thank Mr. Roll for his due diligence. Let me address my first question. Of my 12 years in office, I have never seen this type of motion brought forward. This is basically a motion to amend a decision of a previous action of the county board. And I certainly understand and respect Mr. Rowe's interpretation, but I would like the corporate counsel to verify his interpretation. Because in our rules, it clearly states, 12.7, the motion should be to reconsider. Would you address that first, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Actually, I believe that Guy Haig sent an email to our office on June 11th. Actually, I should say he sent it to the chairman. And the question he posed was, quote, Mr. Chairman, in regard to Resolution 173 on the June meeting agenda, which whereas specifically justifies its return, I request a statement from Corp Counsel John Bodner providing a legal basis to bring it back. And I got that email on June 11th, and on June 11th, later on in the morning, I sent Chairman Albrecht a statement indicating Section 35 of Robert's Rules of Order, 11th edition, allows for amendment of something previously adopted. I received a voicemail from Guy Haig this morning asking, well, how does that, there is a section that I referred that was referenced, and how does that jive with the whole Section 35, which allows amending something previously adopted? And I indicated to him, and what he was pointing out, and I will tell you, is one portion of Section 35 talks about actions that cannot be rescinded or amended. And one section he questioned was when something has been done as a result of the vote on the main motion that is impossible to undo. But then there's another statement after it which talks about the unexecuted part of an order, however, can be rescinded or amended. The bottom line, as Attorney Bodner has indicated back in May, and as I indicated last week, is that I believe Section 35 does allow this to go forward in the manner that it's being presented to tonight.
Thank you. Then my understanding would be then that this would be almost perpetual. Next month, I could move to amend it again.
Well, you could, I'm not going to say it could be perpetual, but yes, based on what,
Yes.
No, it is not perpetual. I'm saying
No,
yes.
I'm saying that I could move to amend it next month.
Based on what I'm saying, yes, you could.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Which is something I think the Judicial Committee needs to address the next time we look at the rules, because as I state, this is the first time I've seen this in 12 years. Let me get to the issue of what happened last month. My amendment was clearly stated to cover the cost of the loss of revenue. And I asked Mr. Orenstein to verify that, which he did. It was for that purpose only. You know, I didn't feel that raising revenue beyond that was warranted. Now, we have a nice report from Mr. Bodner, or Mr. Orenstein, and I thank you for that. Apparently, the 170 does not quite cover the anticipated loss of revenue, which is $20,550, I believe, which was my intent. However, obviously, if you go to $250, the revenue surplus would be $72,800. Am I reading that correct? Unnecessary, in my opinion. In addition, I called the Wisconsin Counties Association today and spoke with one of their chief lobbyists. We need to know that, as the coroner indicated, we're not the only county doing this or proposing it. I'm told that they're thinking of reintroducing another motion before the Committee of Jurisdiction, Finance Committee, I believe it is. Joint Finance actually ends their budget process, and that would be to make this freeze retroactive. So they are responding to what's being done in the county. The WCA's position is simply, if this is approved and it goes through the Senate and through the Assembly and gets to the governor, they're going to ask him to veto it because they think this is not in the best interest of the counties. So my focus, having said all that, in other words, there's a chance that it could be vetoed. That's what the Counties Association is going to try to do, is get this vetoed. Back to Winnebago County, what are we going to do? I still say our responsibility is to cover the anticipated loss and not to increase it beyond that. I do not find merit in doing that. Thank you.
Point of order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only did that to correct a statement, an erroneous statement that's been made, and I don't want to have the whole audience think that it was the truth, because it's not. Corp Counsel cited Article 35, which is what I'm going by. I will refer her to subparagraph 8 on page 307. And in reference to Supervisor Fari's question about a perpetual bringing it back. A negative vote on these motions can be reconsidered, but not an affirmative vote. So if we have an affirmative vote tonight, it can't be brought back. Thank you.
That's that. No, that's not factual.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I want to make a motion to delete the, I think it's not functioning.
Okay. Is that on now? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to delete through line 18. I think that we've already agreed by accepting the minutes without any change that there was a voice vote that was announced, that there was an adjournment that we all accepted that occurred at 10:03, and some of these first lines kind of contradict the things that we all accepted a few minutes ago. And I also just want to comment that I think some of this language about an exhausting 4-hour meeting is a little ridiculous when we schedule 8+ hour budget meetings. If we can't meet for 8 hours, maybe we should also be looking at making 4 hours a cap on how long we can have our budget. So, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So the motion has to be seconded?
I seconded it.
You did second?
Yes, sir.
I believe your motion and the second was just to delete lines 9 through 18?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I have 6 lights on. Are they all on? Are any of them on?
I'm going to go both ways. That didn't come out right.
My light was on for the beginning, but I'll leave it for the beginning and for Kobe's amendment. Can I do that?
Well, I think that.
Well, anyway, I cannot go along with Kobe's recommendation, and the only reason I can't is other people are going to see this agenda, and they're going to look at this resolution, and they're going to wonder why we did this twice. And there's nothing, if we take this out, to let people know why we did this twice. And that's the only reason why I cannot go along with what you're asking. Thank you.
Supervisor Smith on Colby's amendment?
No, I was on the original.
Supervisor Haig?
No.
On Supervisor Gabbert?
No.
Supervisor Thompson?
No.
Supervisor Wingman?
No.
Supervisor Rule?
Oh, yeah. I have a number of rhetorical questions just to pose before we vote. The first whereas basically says the meeting was May 19th. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. It was a lengthy and exhausting 4-hour meeting. Our meetings typically don't go that long. I don't know how you can disagree with that. The coroner was not allowed to convey any repercussions. All you got to do is remember or go back and look at the tape. He never spoke. There was no discussion allowed either on the amendment itself or the amended version of the motion. That's just a fact. I don't know why you would want to delete that. There was a motion to a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting, that's the truth, but the motion was not recognized by the county board chair. I was very open in saying all that. The motion was withdrawn, and a number of supervisors have expressed a concern and regret with respect to their vote. I don't know what you can disagree with. Those are all just facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Skellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one rhetorical question. How can we accept the clause here, the whereas, that says that the motion to adjourn was not recognized by the chairman when we just accepted in the minutes that the meeting was adjourned? Are we saying that the meeting wasn't legally adjourned and we accepted that it actually was? I see this just as a contradiction and makes the board kind of look foolish. Thank you.
Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one clarification before we vote on it, just because we're voting on something because of words and words matter. So I just wanted to be very clear on line 11 where it says, whereas the Winnebago County Coroner was not allowed to convey. Excuse me? So it's where it says, whereas the Winnebago County Coroner was not allowed to convey the repercussions that would result if the ordinance was amended. I just feel I need to clarify because it uses the term allowed. And so allowed means someone was not permitted. So, and that is different than someone did not speak or did not choose to speak. So I just want to clarify that, because otherwise that, if he wasn't allowed and he was prohibited from, then that's correct terminology. But if he didn't for whatever reason, or we didn't ask him to, or he didn't choose to, then allowed, in my opinion, not allowed is not the proper term. So if we're going to vote to put in or take out words, then words matter. So I just feel like I need to clarify whether or not he was not allowed or he just simply did not speak.
I don't know how to answer it.
I'm trying to ring in, but it won't ring.
You already answered 2 times.
No, I'm sorry, I haven't. Not in the amendment.
And I'm just looking for the honest answer. That's all I'm looking for, because we're voting on words, so I just want to make sure.
Supervisor Rowe? Thank you, and that's what I'm looking for, too. My point here, Supervisor Ramos, is that if Supervisor Eisen and/or myself would have been recognized, I know that at least one of us would have called on the coroner to speak. Because there was no discussion allowed before either vote, we never had a chance to ask Barry to comment.
Okay, does that answer your question?
I think it answers it to the best of the ability possible.
That's all I can do.
Okay, we'll vote by machine. If you're going to, on the amendment, to eliminate 9 through 16? 18? Yes, 18. Do you have it set up to vote?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. It's holding.
That has failed. Now back to the original resolution. Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question to help me understand this. The coroner mentioned on a couple of occasions in his presentation that part of the increase might be due to the increase in the cost of financing indigent burials. I hope that is not the case, because I believe that indigent burials are the responsibility of the county and not the responsibility of other persons who pay for death certificates. I don't believe that the cost of indigent burial should in any way be placed just on the families of other persons who have died. I hope that I have misunderstood that, but that's the impression I got, and that's the impression that I get from line, which one is it? There's a line here about indigent burials. Line 24, that's the impression I got. And I don't think this resolution is supportable as long as as the justification for the increase is partly due to indigent burials.
Supervisor Gabbard.
My question is for Mr. Busby because I need some clarification here. On line 34, it says the estate of the deceased shall be liable for payment of said fee unless another party agrees in advance in writing to be responsible for the payment of said fees. If we're talking indigents and we're talking estates, they're kind of conflicting. So if you have someone who you have to charge the fee for and there is no estate and no other party, who pays that fee? Or do we as county taxpayers pay that fee then? And then if we do, is the 170 versus the 250, is that why we are in a deficit for these fee collections because your budget is down for the collections? Explain to me why this fee is only for, like, if I died and needed to be cremated, I'm not in this group.
Okay, the indigent...
Explain to me how this works, if you would, please.
Okay, do you understand the indigent part of this? That there's $2,500, up to $2,500 for the burial or cremation of somebody. And right now, the $150 does come out of that. That's being taken away by the Joint Finance Committee. I'm not going to tax Winnebago County $250. It would just be a no. If somebody can't pay it, why would we would not tax anybody else? I mean, we can't, we're going to be taxing ourselves, putting $250 from one coffer into my coffer. Right. That's not the intent of this. The intent was to, I think, make the difference up of where we're losing money, and it is a revenue in the coroner's office, and it's the only revenue that is coming from outside of the taxes that are paid by the people that can offset some of the fees in the coroner's office. But we would not be charging the county $250 to put in the coroner's budget.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the first question that was asked, in regards to this amended resolution here tonight, I don't believe that question from Mr. Fari was answered. So I want to reintroduce that question based on the concept of our board rules superseding Robert's rules. I believe the question that Mr. Fari asked was in regards to Board Rule 12.7. And if our board rules supersede Robert's rules, when a motion or question has once been determined, which it was in May, any member with the prevailing side, if he or she was present and voted, may move for reconsideration of the vote. And it goes on. But I heard Corporation Counsel expound upon the communications I had with her in regards to Robert's rules, but I did not hear Mr. Fari's question answered. So that's my first question, and I would like a ruling on that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Haig, perhaps you and I have a different recollection of what Mr. Fari asked. I believe Mr. Fari asked what authority would allow this motion to be brought back. And the answer was Section 35 of Robert's Rules.
So if he didn't ask the question, then I will. In regards to 12.7, does that not supersede Robert's Rules? And if since this resolution was voted favorably in May, shouldn't the consideration here be reconsideration instead of amending a past resolution?
Let me read 12.7.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman. While full council is looking at that, I might suggest that 12.7 gives us the instructions on what to do if there's going to be a reconsideration. I've expressly stated this is not a reconsideration. It's amend something previously adopted. Thank you.
Looking at 12.7 and looking at the amended agenda for tonight, which indicates 173-52015 is a motion, not a resolution, I would say that Robert's rules trumps 12.7, since this is, again, a motion to amend.
So basically what we're doing is splitting hairs on defining words, and precisely what Mr. Rowe said is correct. But in regards to a motion or a question, which 173-52015 was in May, it had been determined. So, you know, it's fine that that's the determination of Corporation Council, and I don't necessarily have to agree with it. That's fine, but the question was never answered, so I thought clarification was in order. In regards to this amended adopted ordinance, I would pose the following questions. In regards to the table that Mr. Busby provided for us during the last meeting, and we keep talking about which counties have a higher fee than certain other counties. When it comes to the top counties there, or Milwaukee and Dane perhaps specifically, are those fees for coroners doing this, medical examiners, forensic pathologists? Are we comparing apples and apples? And that would be a question for the coroner.
The work is done by investigators, whether they be a medical examiner or a coroner's deputy, or a coroner or the medical examiner. Most medical examiners have chief deputies just like I have. So they have workers that do most of the viewings.
So if in fact Winnebago County would at some point determine the need for a forensic pathologist, would those fees not need to be considerably higher?
Depends on how you're going to pay for your pathologist. But no. Forensic pathologist does autopsies. That's his expertise.
Good. So with that said, and I certainly do understand that many counties are relooking at all their fee structures right now based on the state budget. I happened to call a gentleman from the Brown County Board, and they are introducing the same type of a resolution approving medical examiner fees tomorrow night during their meeting. I believe that Brown County is in the top 5, maybe the top 3 counties population in the state of Wisconsin. Their current fees are on the sheet that you gave us previously. What they are increasing their cremation permit fee to is $200 from $150, which is still a fairly high increase. You know, it's in excess of 30%. but they are also including another column for the same fee performed by a forensic pathologist. And I think that when we consider due diligence in appropriately defining the fees, I think we also need to appropriately define who's going to be performing these. If we're doing this based on the concept of we may never be able to do this again, why not do it right? I say that based on not only what I see in the language of this resolution from Brown County, which seems very appropriate and something that we should probably be doing at the same time, investigating the future, but also the Judiciary Committee meeting where the increase of the fee, our fee to $250 was decided. I was at that meeting and I was shocked at how that fee was determined. Basically, everybody on that committee got the same sheet that we got last time that had the county, all the different counties' fees on it. And the chairman of that committee, Mr. Wingren, asked Mr. Busby several times, what should our fee be? What should we increase the fee to? And Mr. Busby did not base that increase to $250 on really any information that was in front of him about what the cost of doing business in his department was or anything like that. It was kind of a shoulder shrugging, and all of a sudden this $250 fee came out, and I think that the vote was unanimous, but I think that they were unanimous in voting just because they were happy to see or hear a number. So I definitely cannot support a fee of $250. If we're going to raise this and people are not happy with $170, which was, I think, a 13% increase, I'd like to amend this to $190, which is just under the cremation permit fee that Brown County is going to be potentially endorsing tomorrow night. They're a larger county than we are. And I would also like to include, that's actually for a medical examiner fee, not a coroner, and I don't know if there are separate columns that we should even build into this. That would be coroner, medical examiner, and forensic pathologist. But if we don't do it now, what we're being told is we may not be able to do this again. So why not do it tonight? Should we explore having a forensic pathologist column, have a disinterment permit fee of $50 and a cremation permit for a forensic pathologist of $275? I would at least like to amend this to the coroner fee, instead of a $250 fee, amend it to $190.
Okay.
Order.
So there was a second to it?
Yeah, point of order.
Yes?
How can we amend something that's in front of us as an amendment when the first amendment hasn't been voted on? And secondly, I agree with Mr. Hague when he said that once, and it says in Robert's Rules of Orders, once something is passed, you cannot amend it, you have to reconsider it. It's right here in Robert's Rules of Orders. So this really is not an amendment, it should be a reconsideration. Because it was voted on at the last meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So, according to this, you can't amend what's already been voted on, but you can reconsider it.
Point of order. No, I'm sorry. I'm starting to sound like somebody else, but under Article 35, it's amendable. I mean, I don't like the idea that it's amended, but it's...
To change the pending motion before it is acted upon, proposed amendment must be to read the main motion before it's acted upon. This was acted upon.
Are you reading Article 35?
I'm reading my online edition of Robert's Rules of Orders.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a minute, I'd like the Corporation Counsel to...
Specifically
Just hang on a minute.
Page 306, subparagraph 6, the first two words.
Well, I'm looking at saying amending something previously adopted. What was your, I'm sorry, what, Chairman, what did Mr. Rowe ask or say?
He wanted,
Subparagraph 6 on page 306. It says are amendable.
Well, the wording before that, under standard descriptive characteristics, the motions to rescind and to amend something previously adopted, number 6, as Mr. Rowe just indicated, are amendable by the process of primary and secondary amendment. So, Corporation Counsel's position remains the same. This can be amended.
so where are we at?
Supervisor Hagan made the amendment to change the amount to 190 and it was seconded.
Okay, it was moved and seconded to change the amount to 190. Supervisor Smith on the amount?
No.
Supervisor Finch on the amount? Supervisor Wingren on the amount?
Not really, but I'm gonna jump in here.
No, I mean, he's got one on the board for,
On the amount.
okay.
The column on that side of the room over there, over here, we're trying to.
That has numbers on here, how they all come out.
I thought we were talking about that, but I think that people maybe are confused here. What we're talking about is if someone dies and is cremated, the coroner orders that.
Point of order. Point of order.
You have to talk into the microphone, first of all.
If someone dies and needs to be cremated, the coroner needs to go and view to make sure that Joe Brown is Joe Brown. And check the body to see there aren't any gunshot wounds or knivings or, this has nothing to do with autopsies. You're talking about two different things here. You're talking viewing, this cremation fee is to look to make sure who it is, to make sure we got the right person. If you study the history of this county, a previous coroner, there was a matter where the court order was to disinter a body to be examined because of a crime, and the coroner, without any permission from anyone, had cremated this body. And there was a huge legal brouhaha about that, and maybe some of you old timers know who we're talking about. We have a very professional coroner now. And I think all we're asking is that he be allowed to do his job. Other elected officials and other department heads come to this board and they ask to do the job. We don't nitpick them to death about, Robert's Rules of Order on page 3 says something different than George's Rules of Order on page 10. We do it to help him do his job. That's what we're doing tonight. Because this board in the past, and perhaps rightly so, has been very adamant about not approving budget transfers from the coroner, because he went over the budget for some reason. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either we pay the cost of what he does, or we don't. And when it comes to a budget transfer, there wouldn't necessarily be that problem if we had the right amount charged now. So that's
So you're in
my point.
favor of the 190?
No.
You have to somewhere mention that because that's what's on the floor.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, no, I'm not in favor of the 190. Oh, yeah, we'll cut you off.
Supervisor Smith.
And I'm not in favor of the 190 either. I agree with the 250, and I think it's fair, considering that there are 72 counties in Wisconsin, 53 charge a fee for signing a death certificate. Winnebago is one of the 19 that does not. So an alternative would be to charge a fee to get, if we need extra income, to charge a fee for a death certificate. Do we want to do that? I don't think so.
Supervisor Warnke.
I'm not in favor of increasing it. As far as I'm concerned, it should be increased past the 250. From our history on this board, we looked at bringing in a medical examiner, and by the time we got done looking for it, we found out that they're very far and few that are even out there, and if we would get one, they cost an awful lot of money, plus we have to supply a lab or somewhere that they got to go. So the coroner is doing a great job. I'm just saying, leave it alone and let the man do his job. And if you don't increase it, what's going to happen is he's going to come in for more in his budget. So which way do you want it to go? So just leave it alone. Leave it at the 250 and let's get it over with.
Supervisor Finch.
Actually, I was going to go up an extra $10 that I had written here. And the reason being is this. Families are grieving enough. I feel that we as Winnebago County would be just taking advantage of the grieving families. I think that's pretty sad and pretty low if we're going to do something like that. You know, I have yet to hear where he's coming up with the $250, besides some other county may have it. You know, during our budget session, I've heard many times, wants and needs. Well, I think this is nothing but a want. It is not a need. Therefore, I'll go with the 190, or even kick it up to 200. But that's more than enough. I mean, you're going from 150 and up. That's a lot the way it is. And there's a lot of families this day and age can't even afford that. So we as Winnebago County want to take advantage of them. Thank you.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not respond to Mr. Wingren's comments about this side of the body. However, let me go back to my original reference and reason for raising it $20 to $170. That was to cover the loss of income, projected loss. Based on the document we have from Mr. Ornstein, if we raise it another $20 to $190, your document indicates that $170 is about $2,000 short of the projected loss. Would this be more than sufficient to cover the projected loss? Yes. It would be. Shouldn't that be our initiative, ladies and gentlemen? Shouldn't it just be to raise the fee to cover the loss that is projected by the new state budget, and not to capitalize on this unfortunate issue? I urge you just to support this, and 190 is a compromise, I realize that, and we'll go with that. But our job should be to cover the loss of revenue, not to capitalize on an unfortunate situation. Thank you.
Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm fully in support of this amendment. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think what we need to be doing here is just like Supervisor Zafari said, cover the costs. When we look at other departments, we do something very similar. When we look at the health departments and we do the sanitation fee schedules, we are specifically looking at how much, what their expenses are to provide that service, and then we are adjusting those fees to allow for the revenue to ensure we cover those expenses, but to try to avoid going any excessively over than that. In my opinion, this is the exact same principle. If we go to the 250, we will have gone from the 42nd highest to the tie for the 10th highest in the state. I don't want to be known as the 10th highest taxing county for death, because that's essentially what it is. That's, to me, what the headline looks at. If we increase this from what I was our 150 previously to 250, that's a 67% increase in 1 year. How often do we actually increase any sort of fee that much in 1 year? If we increase it to the 250 rather than the 190, We already heard that we'd have a surplus of $72,000. So who are we really burdening when we increase it and we have this revenue of $72,000? I would argue we're burdening excessively those who have had a loss of life in their family. And I would always err on the side of burdening those who are alive than unfortunately those who are dead and the families that are grieving for it. So the $190 makes perfect sense. We cover the cost that way, but we do not go over. We're recognizing to our citizens that there's a cost to a service, but we're only going to charge you to the extent of that and nothing more. I think that's the pact we have with them. So I'd urge you to support this amendment, and if it doesn't pass, to defeat the $250. Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had rung in before Supervisor Farley used the word compromise, but that's what I had rung in for. I was going to ask the supervisor who made the motion to change it to 190 if he would agree to a friendly amendment of 200. Pardon me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're at the 200. Supervisor Thompson at the $200.
I'm assuming that the matter now is whether to go to 190.
No, it's 200 now.
To 200?
Yes.
I think that is better than what was proposed. And I think that we still need to take a look at the amount that is necessary for the coroner to carry on his duties and not include additional things like indigent burials. Indigent burials are our responsibility, not that of the people who have deaths in the family for other reasons. I can support the 200, I think, as a compromise. I cannot resist a wicked impulse. Just a moment. I'm rather happy that the scholarship recipients did not stay to see us in action this evening.
Supervisor Winden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really thank Mr. Haig. I support the 200 in the spirit of compromise. And to Mr. Farley, hopefully you heard at the end of my comments I was just kidding. So, you know.
There's something to that. This board is leaving the back of this room with hatred, which it never has done in years. So we have to get back on an even keel here. Supervisor Knitsky on the 200.
Yes, and I would also like to hear once more from Coroner Leslie on this. We've been throwing 190, 200 around. I'd like him to address something along those two numbers. Thank you.
He's looking for an answer what the difference between 190 and the 200 is going to mean.
And 200, can you handle that? And why not, or why?
The spirit of compromise, this isn't about me and it's not for me. This is for the county to recoup some of the monies that can't be recouped in the future. It's up to you to figure out, when I come back in the end of the year and say I need more money, I can't help, I can't predict how many deaths are going to happen, how many autopsies we need and everything else. So in spirit of compromise, I can handle 200, but maybe by the time I exit office, who knows what's going to happen. They might have rescinded this or changed the law in Madison, that's a possibility. But at minimum, we are going backwards all the time. And if you look at the numbers, even at 200, that puts you at 23rd place out of the 72 counties for collecting fees at that 200. And I think that it's better than where we are. At 170, we're at 42nd place if you're placing things. But the problem is, what's going to happen in the future? The crystal ball says, I think you're going to need a full-time secretary, and you're probably going to need some full-time investigators when myself and my deputies maybe exit or whatever else. But if you can do it with, without raising other fees, I don't know where you're going to get the money except for from taxes.
Thank you for your answer.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I had mentioned before, 53 counties are already charging for signatures on a death certificate. If the coroner finds that the $200 is not enough, and that, would it be advisable to allow him to request a charge for signing death certificates?
Okay, we're voting, we'll vote with our little iPad. It's for $200 to amend it, that resolution, so vote aye if you approve at 200 or no. That is passed. Now back to the amended resolution. Vote aye if you approve as amended, or no. That is passed. Resolution number 174, 2015, commendation for James M. Travis. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for Resolution 174, 2015.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I have a statement to read first.
Okay.
James Travis. Jim started employment at Winnebago County Human Services on November 19, 1984 as a mental health crisis worker. In his career, he frequently encountered local citizens at
Okay,
crisis...
this is where we ran into trouble last time. We just break it up. Go ahead.
I'll start over. Jim started employment at Winnebago County Human Services on November 19, 1984 as a mental health crisis worker. In his career, he frequently encountered local citizens at crisis points in their lives and worked to help them recover. He estimates that he has interviewed over 3,000 persons as a mental health professional. In August 1989, Jim was promoted to a supervisory position, initially in Oshkosh, and in January 1994 was transferred to Neenah Human Services as a clinical coordinator and supervisor working with adults with severe mental illnesses. Jim helped initiate several projects that improved county services and saved local tax dollars, and several of those operations continue at the Human Services Department to this day. His commitment and dedication to the citizens of Winnebago County is outstanding. Please join me in expressing our gratitude for Jim's 30 years of service and best wishes for his future in retirement.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 175, 2015, commendation for Deborah Heward. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Move for resolution number 175, 2015. Debbie worked with Parkview residents as an occupational therapy assistant and activities specialist from August 17, 1987 until her retirement on June 5 this year. Debbie was instrumental in establishing the first resident money-making workshop program at Parkview. Products were made by the residents and sold by the residents. The residents received profits from their labors and felt a sense of self-worth and esteem.
This program also assists residents in transitioning to community placement and other workshops outside the facility. Revenues were returned to residents through a variety of purchases and outings. The workshop program has been going for a long time, thanks to Debbie, and it will continue for a long time to come. Please join me in thanking Debbie for her many years of devotion to our residents and in extending our best wishes for her retirement.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution 176, 6/2015, commendation of Diane Marks. Supervisor Rasmussen.
I move for resolution number 175, 6/2015. Diane Marks began her dedicated career as a certified nursing assistant at Parkview Health Center 35 years ago and retired on June 1, 2015. She deeply enjoyed her job and was appreciated by all those who worked with her. Diane had a deep affinity for the care of residents with mental illnesses and thrived in providing quality care to every resident she cared for. Her strong work ethic and good sense of humor was appreciated by residents, families, and peers alike. We appreciate all that Diane has provided to PVHC over these 34 years and wish her the best in retirement.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 177, 6/2015, commendation for Stephen Verweel. Supervisor Rasmussen.
I move for resolution 177, 6/2015. With over 29 years of service to the citizens of Winnebago County, Stephen Verweel retired from the Sheriff's Office on June 2nd, 2015. Steve began his career as a deputy in the jail and with great interpersonal skills quickly began to rise through the Sheriff's Office ranks. In 1993, Steve was promoted from patrol deputy into the position of detective. He spent considerable time in the Lake Winnebago Area Drug Enforcement Unit as both an investigator and supervisor. Conducting interviews is where Steve excelled, and he used investigations to propel himself through the ranks of sergeant, detective sergeant, and lieutenant. His career included a combat tour of duty during the Gulf War and culminated with his appointment as detective captain. Steve's distinguished record is exemplary and worthy of recognition. Please join me in expressing our gratitude and appreciation for a career of personal sacrifice and service to others.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 178, 6/2015, commendation of Charles Marusik. Supervisor Rasmussen.
I move for resolution 178, 6/2015. Charles Marusik began his career with the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office in 1992 as a deputy sheriff assigned to the Corrections Division. Coming to the department later in life, Chuck brought with him a wealth of experience from private sector employment. He used this experience to set himself apart from his peers, and in 1995 was assigned to the Patrol Division. Chuck was an old soul who showed genuine care and compassion for the welfare of the elderly. He collected old cars and would use his car collections as conversation starters during his shift to build relations and reminisce with older citizens that many of his peers couldn't relate to. With over 23 years of service, Chuck retired from the Sheriff's Office on June 3rd, 2015. Please join me in expressing our gratitude and best wishes as he enjoys retirement traveling the country.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 179, 6/2015, authorize addendum to ground lease agreement between Beechwood Plaza Hotel at Oshkosh LLC and Whitman Regional Airport. Supervisor Warnke.
Pull this there's resolution because we need to do some changes and take it back to the committee.
Okay. Resolution number 180, 6/2015, adopt revisions to pay schedules for non-union regular employees. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 180, 6/2015.
Okay, it was moved and seconded. We'll vote by our iPad. There are no lights on. Aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. Pardon?
Did Hardy?
I don't know.
I went one too far, but the majority, I'll update the number when I print it.
Is Supervisor Hardy's stuff on his desk? Okay.
Do you want me to cast it, even since he's not at his desk?
Okay. We'll vote, and then she can check how his vote would, that is passed.
Excuse me.
No.
I didn't vote no.
You want to
I'm
change
trying
it?
to be positive all night.
You want to change it?
Yes.
That is passed. Resolution number 181, 6/2015, repeal paragraph 23 of motion number 520 to the State of Wisconsin 2015 and 2017 budget bill, SB 21 and AB 21, relative to shoreline zoning standards. Supervisor Egan.
Chairman, I move for the approval of 181-62015.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few things to say about this, and it's probably going to get a little complex, but I did agree to have my name put on here. When this originally came forward, what's going on down there needs to be addressed. However, over the last several days, how can I explain this? We've gotten into a little conflict between county authority and town authority. I'm a town supervisor and a county supervisor, so I got a little bit of a conflict. Without elaborating and going into a great amount of detail on this, there are several bills pending in the legislature that would address this also. I do believe, though, that this, I firmly believe, should be taken out of the budget. And this is part of this initiative also, and addressed on the floor as a separate bill. However, I'm announcing this to say that I am going to abstain for reasons of conflict here, but I do appreciate Mr. Egan bringing this forward. It is an important issue, and it does need to be addressed. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Supervisor Keel.
Typically, I'll speak out on staying in the lanes and abstaining. This time, I did call my state senator's office and did some due diligence and looked at some of the facts in here. And I just wanted to speak in favor of this one because I believe it affects us directly, and it does reduce our amount of local control, whether it's Vilas County, Winnebago, or whatever county. I think we know our shorelines better than they do in Madison. So I'm going to vote in support of this resolution.
Thank you. Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we're going to be sending resolutions to the state, to our legislators, I think it's important that we use the correct terminology. On lines 10 and lines 39, it's not the Joint Finance Committee. It's a joint committee on finance. And I think that people use this, but we should say if we're going to send something to somebody, at least use the correct wording. Thank you.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Widener. Next time we'll let you write this one for us. On this here, I think it's very important that this is brought forward because of a lot of our lake, like Lake Winnebago, we got Lake Poygan, we got Rush Lake, we got your rivers, Fox River and Wolf River, your Waco Creeks, and many other rivers and streams. And this here, without anyone overlooking these things, you're going to have sludge, you're going to have runoff, you're going to have old buildings falling down and everything else. And I just think that this is something that the county has got to watch over. Mr. Faria is talking about the towns. There's nothing in here saying about the towns one way or the other, and so I understand where he's coming about. But if the counties don't watch over this, this is going to be a problem. We're going to be losing our good waterways that we have here in Winnebago County, and I think this is something that we must watch over. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have a conflict. Towns Association is generally in favor of this, not the motion 520, but the repeal of paragraph 23. I, however, am coming from a different perspective. Towns have long thought that, and let's put it, town of Winnebago in particular, we have thought that we should be in charge of our own zoning, shoreline zoning. And we've been pretty independent in maintaining that all along. Because I'm a county supervisor also, I'll be abstaining, but I really would like to see this shoreline zoning go back into the purveyance of towns. Thank you.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you. I am also a town chairman. I will be supporting this. When I was elected to this seat, I was voted to go ahead and for the betterment of the county, not just my own area, it's for the county. The people that I'm representing are I've got 3.5 townships that I represent. We've got the Fox River that goes through there. We've got different streams and creeks that go through there. We do not want them disturbed. No place in here does it saying it's going to give it to the towns or take anything away from the towns. But someone has to go ahead and watch the control of these so something don't happen to these. So hopefully all of you take it and vote in favor of it. And if there's any questions that I have not answered that some of you would like to get more expertise, some more up-to-date on, Kerry Rowe and Jerry Bogies in the back.
We'll vote by our iPads. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. While we're voting, I serve on many different boards and commissions, or actually different boards and commissions. And the same is with the people that can't vote on it. I serve on one, I can't say the name or I'll get kicked off the board, but they sit there and sell the project for 6 months, and then when it comes time to vote, I can't be involved with the voting. I got to get up and walk out. You know what I mean? But they sell the project on what they're trying to do. That passed. Supervisor Robel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we adjourn until Tuesday, July 21st at 6 p.m.